We've all seen this iconic moment from episode 29 of the anime Monster, where the antagonist, Johan Liebert, lures a detective that got a little too close to the truth to a rooftop and manipulates him to delete himself. But how did we get here? What psychological tactics were at play? Today we're breaking it down from top to bottom, not only for your entertainment, but also for your protection. If you are uncomfortable with sensitive topics, I advise you to click off now. It only gets darker as it goes on. Now let's start from the beginning. The episode opens with Richard talking to his ex-wife, having a discussion about their daughter, Rosemary. This dialogue is crucial not just for setting the scene, but for laying the emotional groundwork for the manipulation that unfolds.
Those old pictures, you always keep them on you?
Of course I do. I bet she's a lot bigger now. They grow up so fast. These photos of mine must be ancient history. But still, no matter how grown up she gets, I'll always know it's her the moment our eyes meet. She'll always be my little girl. Oh, almost forgot. Whenever she's ready, please give Rosemary what's in this envelope. They're newspaper clippings mostly, and the official internal affairs report from when I shot that young man who killed all those people. I'm not asking you to defend me. You've done that enough. I shouldn't have shot him. I'll be the first to say it. I just want our daughter to know the truth about her old man, even if it's terrible.
The conversation shifts to a darker note, as Richard brings up a pivotal moment in his past, the shooting of a young man while he was under the influence. This incident is not just a blip in his history, it's a heavy chain of guilt he carries around his neck. When Richard's investigation leads him to threaten Johan Liebert's plan, the young serial killer decides to take matters into his own hands and pay Richard a visit.
Mr. Brown? It's Johan. Johan Liebert, sir. I've been trying to get in touch with you, but to no avail, so I figured I'd drop by.
Johan brings Richard to a bar under the guise of a law student that is doing a school report. Now, this is where some of the most terrifying manipulation tactics ever seen are revealed in quick succession that lead to an unthinkably horrible outcome.
Oh, how rude of me. Care for something to drink?
No thanks, I'm fine.
That's right, you do abstain from alcohol. Yeah, probably for the best. You did have quite a drinking problem. I mean, you were drunk when you shot that boy, isn't that right? Or so I've heard.
Yes, I was. Not that it matters. What I did is unforgivable, drunk or not.
I have a few questions about what happened, if you don't mind. Tell me about the victim, Stefan Jos, age 17. Of what crimes had the child been accused?
Johan pretends to have only heard about Richard's drinking indirectly, or so I've heard, forcing Richard to confirm it himself. This feigned ignorance serves a dual purpose. It makes Johan appear uninformed and thus not judgmental, creating a false sense of security for Richard. And it also compels Richard to engage more deeply with his guilt by acknowledging it aloud. Having established a psychological beachhead, Johan then directs the conversation towards the victim, Stefan Jos, and the crimes he was accused of. This pivot is strategic. It shifts the focus from Richard's personal failings to the specifics of the incident. However, the underlying manipulation remains. By asking Richard to recount the details of the case, Johan is not just seeking information, he's forcing Richard to relive the event, further entrenching the feelings of guilt and shame.
Don't be so naive, son. Jos was a monster. He was old enough to rape and murder 9 women and almost killed 2 more.
So you executed him?
No, I didn't!
Right, pardon me. Speaking of, Article 40 of the UN Convention states every child is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty according to the law. Were you familiar with that?
Yes, of course I was. I used to work in juvenile detention.
I see. And Article 37? The one that goes, you cannot impose capital punishment or life imprisonment without possibility of release on any person below the age of 18? You knew that one?
Johan sharply escalates the psychological pressure by labeling the victim, Stephen Yos, as a monstrous criminal responsible for heinous acts, before abruptly questioning the legitimacy of Richard's actions. So you executed him. This abrupt juxtaposition serves to shock Richard, forcing him to defend his actions in a moment of heightened vulnerability. Johan's mention of the UN Convention serves to amplify Richard's self-doubt. By highlighting a global standard of justice that seemingly contradicts Richard's actions, Johan not only questions the legality of those actions, but also implicitly accuses Richard of violating a universally acknowledged human right. This tactic is insidiously effective because it taps into fundamental human fears of being unjust, immoral, or inhumane, significantly amplifying Richard's feelings of guilt and inadequacy.
The convention agreements are considered basic human rights for adults and children alike. What kind of a fool do you take me for? You really think I planned it all out in advance? My shooting him was a drunken mistake. Look, I know that what I have done can never be undone, all right? And I accept the consequences of my actions.
Please, Mr. Brown, allow me to explain. I'm not trying to antagonize you. I just want to cover my topic from every angle. I'm very sorry, sir. I really should have used more tact. Shall we walk? The night air might do us some good. I'd like to purchase the bottle, please. Just something to take the edge off of the night air.
In this subsequent phase of the conversation, Johan subtly continues to manipulate Detective Richard by engaging in a psychological tactic known as moral disengagement. This is showcased through Richard's defensive response to the notion of premeditated action versus an accidental, alcohol-fueled mistake. Johan's reference to the convention agreements as basic human rights for both adults and children further corners Richard, prompting an emotional and defensive outburst from him. The decision to purchase a bottle to take the edge off is a calculated move by Johan to exploit Richard's known vulnerabilities.
Stefan Yos's background.
Of course. He grew up in an East German orphanage or something like that.
There's more to it than you know. His crimes were to be expected if you knew his past. To a child like Stefan, that orphanage was hell on earth. He was a good boy, but that didn't save him from the horror. That might have even made it worse. That orphanage devoured his mind and then picked its teeth with his soul. The Convention on the Rights of Children, Article 6, the right to life, survival, and development. Article 8, preservation of identity. Article 19, protection from abuse. To Stefan, these were so many fairy tales. Evil. There's no more fitting word for a place like that. I can barely speak its name aloud. 511 Kinderheim still sends a chill down my spine. So, when will you be seeing your daughter?
In this part of the dialogue, Johan leverages a sophisticated manipulation tactic known as emotional priming. By recounting the tragic background of Stefan, the child Richard shot, Johan not only humanizes Stefan, but also introduces a narrative that evokes sympathy and further guilt in Richard. The mention of Stefan's upbringing in an East German orphanage and the suggestion that his crimes were a product of his environment is a calculated move to challenge Richard's moral justification for his actions. Johan then masterfully transitions from the broader context of Stefan's background and the systemic failures of the orphanage to a direct personal question about when Richard will be seeing his daughter. This abrupt shift serves to connect the emotional and moral implications of Stefan's story directly to Richard's personal life, intensifying the psychological pressure. It's a reminder of Richard's own responsibilities and failures as a parent, implicitly suggesting that Richard's actions have not only legal and moral consequences, but deeply personal ones as well.
You got drunk and shot that boy to death. That's what you said. Plenty of people did see you drinking in a bar that day, but that was after you'd already killed Stefan. It's kind of odd, Mr. Brown. I've researched this case exhaustively, and try as I might, I can't find a single person who saw you drinking before you murdered that young man. Not a one. Mr. Brown, this charade has gone on long enough. Were you really drunk when you pulled the trigger?
What?
You were quite sober, and you were calm. You executed Stefan Yos, and you knew exactly what you were doing. Did I get it right?
No!
How weak the mind when it wants to forget. Maybe you didn't forget. Maybe you're lying. Is it a lie you tell everyone around you, or perhaps a lie you tell yourself? Were you absolutely certain he committed those crimes? Certain enough to put him down like a rabid dog? You're guilty of murder. Do you think your lies can free you?
In this critical juncture, Johan Liebert employs a manipulation technique known as fact confrontation, combined with psychological destabilization. By directly challenging Richard's narrative of the events leading to Stefan's death, Johan aims to dismantle Richard's moral and psychological defenses, pushing him into a corner of self-doubt and guilt. Johan meticulously confronts Richard with facts that contradict Richard's account of being drunk at the time of the shooting. This confrontation is not merely about the details of that day, but serves to undermine Richard's constructed narrative of the events. By highlighting the absence of any witnesses to Richard drinking before the murder, Johan introduces doubt into Richard's version of the story, suggesting that Richard's actions were premeditated and executed with a clear mind. This confrontation has a profound impact on Richard. Johan's strategy forces Richard to question his own memory and the truth of his actions, effectively isolating him from any moral high ground he might have occupied. Now he brings everything together in a terrible and final brush. If you notice anyone trying any of these tactics on you, cut them off immediately. Subscribe for more videos like this and stay safe.
That boy's blood is on your hands. How are you going to look Rosemary in the eye tomorrow? Isn't her daddy a coward and a murderer, hiding behind an empty bottle? Well, Richard, how about a drink?